So this is one of my favourite tests. This is a food intolerance test. And it's really useful for looking at what foods are in your diet that might be causing a problem that you may not notice. So what kind of problems may you be having? Well, we've got, for example, ADHD, anxiety, digestive issues like gas, bloating, indigestion, constipation, diarrhea, skin issues like eczema, weight gain, and then autoimmune conditions like arthritis, Hashimoto's, asthma, and problems like that. So what do we do? Well, this test is quite simple. Basically, you take there used to be a blood draw, right? They used to draw a whole ton of blood, and I remember when I first did it, they take 5 vials of blood. Now it's much more simple. It's just a pinprick and a little blood spot, and you put that on a piece of blotting paper, and we send that off to the lab in Canada, and it gives really good results. So they analyse all these different foods, right? All the proteins in these foods. Essentially what they do is they take some of your blood, centrifuge it, stick it in a petri dish, add in some proteins, and then see how your immune system responds. And if your immune system responds quite actively, it means that your body doesn't like this food, and it's creating inflammation, which then creates further problems. So let's say, for example, you have a problem with milk, which is in the dairy category. Maybe when you get this back, you get these bars from minimum to maximum, and maybe you've got a big mark here in the red for dairy. So you can see here, this is actually one that I did. You've got all these different foods down here, and then you can see where everything is in those categories, and so you know which ones to watch for. Here's all the categories here: dairy, beans, fruits, grains, fish and seafood, nuts and seeds, meat and fowl, veggies, and herbs and spices. And there's 190 foods altogether. So it's really comprehensive. So when I did mine, first, this one's actually much better. But the first one I did, I had a huge problem with gluten, so grains, beans, nuts and seeds, which is very interesting because they're all plant babies, and that was my Achilles heel. So when I removed all those, it was fine. Interestingly, I had no problem with meat or fish or dairy or anything like that. Since then, I've done a lot of work on my gut. I've healed it, I've sealed it, and now I really don't have much of an immune response to anything. I still have some issues with gluten. Occasionally I have a bit of sourdough bread. I don't really sweat it. Beans I was never bothered about anyway. I've still got some issues with beans. And nuts, I don't know, not really bothered about nuts either. But at the time, I really needed to know exactly what was going on, and I had like 86 intolerances in order to remove those foods to heal up and then slowly add them back in again. So what are the root causes? What are the root causes of food intolerances? Well, our genes, our metabolic type. So for example, people from the northern hemisphere generally do better with meats and fish and root vegetables, whereas people from equatorial regions do better with carbohydrate foods, beans, grains, seeds, nuts and things like that. Because genetically or evolutionarily, they've evolved to consume those foods more. So that can play a part of it. Stress. And when you are stressed, that turns off your digestive tract, which means that food particles can leak through your digestive tract and into your bloodstream, and that creates a big problem. Alcohol does the same. Infections such as bacterial infections, viral infections, fungal infections, these can all cause food intolerances. Taking medications is a big one, particularly antibiotics, which destroys a lot of the beneficial. It destroys the bad bacteria, but it also destroys the beneficial bacteria, which do good things in your gut. And then food quality. Dead food, ultra-processed food, sugar, things like that. That's going to create a problem. So these are the sort of root causes. And what are the solutions? Well, the number one solution is identifying the root causes and removing them, right? We don't want to sort of just supplement our way to a solution by not actually removing the problems in the first place. So that's number one. We could do things like a rotation diet, where we change the foods we eat on a daily basis. That gives our immune system some time to calm down, and it also helps us really identify if there's some problems. For example, if you don't eat any, if you have a problem with milk, like I mentioned earlier, and you don't have any dairy for a few days, and then you suddenly add it in, it's easier to identify if it's a problem. And then I've got here at the bottom the elimination diet. So that's basically removing everything completely for 30 days and then adding it back in later. And some people like to add it in small doses, but I like to add it in big doses so you can really see if there's a problem or not. And then, of course, rebuilding the gut, right? So once we've removed the foods that are a problem, we want to rebuild it, reseal it, and we do that with things like bone broth, meat stocks, good probiotics, natural probiotics like sauerkraut, kefir, yogurt, fermented foods, beet kvass, things like that. And then, of course, prebiotic fiber. So that'll be things like onions, garlics, leeks, pectin from like apple skins and things like that. And there's some really good protocols you can do around apple skins to help rebuild your gut garden. And then, of course, keeping the bad food, the processed food out of your diet. So this is really, really fantastic. I find it really useful. We've even had sportsmen that have done it, and they found like literally 1 or 2 foods that were a big problem for them. Once they removed them from their diet, they increased their running performance, their triathlon performance. So really, really powerful, very simple, pinprick some blood, send it off to a lab, and then we get all these results. So if you have any questions, feel free to message me, and happy to help. Cheers.